Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from Kidderminster in England, Daniel Hill, who's a life coach, a mentor, and a therapist who enables people to master their psychology and emotional well-being. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Daniel. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Thank you, Jürgen. Good morning. Good evening.
Yes, evening where we are. Now, Riley Jarvis, and it's probably middle of the night where he is right now, he was our guest on episode 519 of the InnovaBuzz podcast. He introduced us and suggested that we have a conversation. So big hello to Riley.
Yeah, Riley's a good guy. Yeah, I've known Riley for a few years now. Yes.
Yeah, now I'm really fascinated to have this conversation with you today. I know you do a lot of work with NLP as a technique. You work with Enneagrams, which I'm not familiar with very much. And you also use EFT, emotional freedom technique, as one of your tools in your kit bag. And so there's lots there that we can talk about in terms of tools, but also really about the whole idea of mindset and how we can look after our mental well-being and mental health. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. But my opening question always is along the lines of what's the impact you're making in the world, Daniel?
The impact that I'm making is to help people to feel better. In simple terms, what does better mean? It means that we experience less stress, less anxiety, less low mood, and we take control of our mind where the mind, people will often report that the mind controls them. So it's learning to master your mind rather than having your mind master you.
Yeah, fascinating concept. I'm always intrigued, the mind. I mean, sometimes we talk about the mind and we refer to our brain. And other times we talk about the mind and it's kind of this nebulous concept that is everywhere in the body, or it's the whole body. How do you see the mind as a concept?
It's an interesting point because, right next to me here on the table is a book about body mind. Well, what on earth is that? So I would call it the unconscious. I work with the unconscious, and I use a lot of unconscious tools that work on the unconscious mind at an unconscious level. So with health conditions, that's about 10% of my work, and it was my personal journey to getting into this vocation, which was healing myself. It was working with body mind. Well, what's body mind? Well, it's just another part of the unconscious where we're saying that something that may be showing up as a dis-ease within inside of us has been created by the unconscious. And there is a dis-ease at the deep unconscious level that's thus showing up at a physiological level. There's a lovely quote which says, the issues are in the tissues. But that's one part of my work.
Love that, yeah.
That's one part of my work. So other clients who I've seen over the years have come with all different types of challenges, and they all stem from the unconscious. We think that we are consciously in control of our lives, and we are, but it's probably only to a few percent. Really, the unconscious is the thing that is so in control and operates our whole system of functioning that it would make complete sense to go and use tools that work on the unconscious, because it's even just me talking is an unconscious practice. I've had to learn unconsciously in order to be able to do that. Everything that we do stems from that central place. I remember having hypnosis 20 odd years ago. It was my first, probably 25 years ago. It was my first ever door into this work, and it was as a client. And I remember the hypnotherapist saying, your unconscious mind is the most powerful tool that you can handle. And I always remember that because I was listening to the hypnosis and it just kept coming into my mind every time I listen to the 25-minute hypnosis recording. It was back on a tape back then, you know. And it still stays in my mind to this day. The unconscious is the most powerful tool that we will handle. And it comes without an operating manual. You know,
yes.
And we download all of these things throughout our life, which then create all of these operating systems. And then we go into get married and get into business and have families and raise children and do all these things. But without realizing we're running all of these unconscious patterns. And so the limitations that we reach most usually are to do with an unconscious limitation. We get somewhere and we can't get any further, or we just keep hitting our head against a brick wall, proverbially, because what the pattern in the unconscious is telling us is we need to do A plus B equals C, or, you know, and it just doesn't work. And that's because we're stuck in patterns. Dr. Richard Bandler says something like, who's one of the co-creators of NLP, we're always stuck in what we know. When we get stuck, we're stuck in what we know. So it's a pattern. It comes from the unconscious that says, there's another quote, the map is not the territory, where the unconscious thinks the map is the territory. It's the experience that we've once had. So unconscious, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I love that. And you touched on a couple of key presuppositions from NLP there that I think are really important. And I'd love to unpack the map is not the territory one. I mean, I think we can translate that as, I mean, to me, it's kind of, and I'm actually giving a speech tomorrow where I'm using a metaphor to describe this actual principle to people who don't know anything about NLP, but I'm not talking about NLP. And the metaphor is a pair of Polaroid sunglasses that I have, and I love wearing them because they cut the glare. But they also cut off reflections off the water, for example. So if I'm out walking and somebody says to me, hey, have a look at those beautiful reflections off the water, I can't see them because my glasses are cutting that out. I'm aware of that, so I can take the glasses off, I can see that. But if I'm not aware that that's happening, then what they're telling me doesn't exist in my mind, let's say, because it doesn't exist in my worldview. I can't see it. So therefore it doesn't exist in my mind. So that's kind of, to me, an example of that. The map is not the territory. The reflections are there, but I don't believe they are because I can't see them.
You can't see them, you can't sense them. And we only have 5 senses, you know? So if one of those is blocked, it's blinkered. It's like the racehorse. It's blinkered, isn't it? Sort of like, you know, it's focused on its outcome, on the goal. But the other part of that, because the racehorse one, because unconsciously what we do, analogous to those things, so we block things out all the time, and that's because how many million bits of information do we take in every second? Millions or billions, ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it might be billions. And if we had to process all that, we'd go stark raving mad. It sort of be total overwhelm. So there's a protection mechanism there that blocks stuff out that the mind thinks or the brain thinks is not important to us. And that's how we're always blocking stuff out. And unfortunately, the downside of that is that in its attempt to keep us safe, to protect us, and that's what the blinkers do, protect the horse and keep it focused on running forward. That's what the sunglasses do. They protect me from getting tired eyes from the glare. But the downside of that is by blocking something else out, it's limiting our worldview.
Yes. Generalizations, distortions, and deletions are what are called beliefs. Absolutely. Yeah. So we're deleting information all the time, masses. We're generalizing lots of information, generalizing this and distorting information massively. I think it's been said that from those billions of bits of information a second that we download, we filter it to, if I remember my teachings correctly, it was between something like 5 to 35 bits of information a second.
I think we can process 7 plus or minus 2, it says, at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah,
small.
but
All we know is
yeah.
it's tiny. It is tiny.
Yeah, and which highlights how powerful the unconscious mind is, because it's actually dealing with all that stuff.
Absolutely, completely. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I trained originally as a counselor back in the day, and I did think about becoming a psychotherapist, and there's elements of that in my work. But for whatever reason, I was just continuously pulled to work with the unconscious. It was always work with the unconscious, the unconscious, the unconscious. And then I started to read stories of people who'd overcome all different types of things. Originally, it was health stuff because that was my challenge. And it boggled my mind that this wasn't part of like general practice with psychology. And then I just kept learning more and more and more. And sometimes I would meet people I'd have conversations where what I was saying was blinkered to their worldview. And they might have been a psychologist, or they might have been a counselor or a psychotherapist. You know, I was like, look, here's a book of a man who's healed of multiple sclerosis. It took 8 years, but, you know, he worked on his mind. One of the chapters was, is your mind ready to be well? I remember reading that going, what the hell has that got to do with recovery from serious disease? Because I was blinkered to what was possible, even though I was using my sensory acuity to think, well, I'm not, this isn't a charlatan. This is somebody who's written a story about their journey. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some fascinating stories. One of the things, because that kind of prompted in my mind the idea, you talk quite a lot about transformation and how to actually achieve it and how hard it can be.
Right.
I talk transformation in a business sense, but it's kind of like taking you from where you are today to where you want to go. So in transformation sense, tell us a little bit about how you see transformation, why it's so hard, and what are some of the things that you do and what we can do ourselves perhaps to, you know, if we're looking for a transformation in a certain area. I mean, it might not be as momentous as curing ourselves of multiple sclerosis. Hopefully there's not too many sufferers of that here, but at the same time, we might have a little thing like losing weight or getting fitter.
Right. Yeah. Making the business more profitable. There's all different types of things. But the first thing would be to notice what your outcome is and realize what your outcome is. Otherwise, you're heading in the sea of potential and possibility. Where are you heading? So where are you going? Occasionally you'll meet people and they'll go, I'm going with life. I'm going with the flow. That's okay. But we know that when we have focus, we are then generalizing, distorting, and deleting towards the focus that we wish to get to. I use the word wish rather than want. It's something that I have done my best to park to an extent where it's, go with me on this. It's like the power of love overcoming the power of fear, being that love is more powerful than fear. So by getting into a wish, well, where do you wish to take the business? Where do you wish to be in 5 years' time? Where do you wish to be in your health, in your relationships? Where do you wish to be in terms of anything? By setting that as an outcome, you're then reminding yourself where you're heading towards. So that gives you that focus. The transformational journey is not easy, as you say. Like from the caterpillar to the butterfly or the moth. It is challenging. It's not linear. I've never worked with anybody where it's straightforward. But when you're working with that resistance, there's something that I've coined the phrase of, and I call it be with the non-being. So that is, be with the awkwardness of the the new reality that you're wishing to move towards. It's like, you know, when you buy a pair of shoes, you know, and they're tight for a while, it doesn't feel right. You want to go back to the old shoes that were falling apart almost. But finding comfort despite the uncomfortability is one of the tools that you can use to remind yourself that it's going to feel awkward for a while, whatever that transformation. Otherwise, there's a phrase from one of my books, which was, I'm going to go back to like serious disease again. It says at a very deep unconscious level, they would rather stick with the unpleasant present than to take a chance on the future that they do not yet know. And you could argue that with every part of transformation. It's where we are. It may be uncomfortable, and we're setting a goal, which is that I'd like to get to here. And to get there, it's going to feel frightening. It's going to feel awkward. It might not look exactly right to begin with. So all of those senses are going to have to get used to a new reality, and that's going to be strange. Like when we went to school, you remember, did you ever change school? Like when you went from one school to the next, and it was like, oh, I've now got to meet new classmates, and there's going to be kids older than me. It was awkward for a while. All of those things that we went through. We've all been through transformation. You and I have been through puberty a long time ago. We had our first kiss a long time ago. Had our first beer. Can you remember your first beer? Maybe you don't drink, Jürgen. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I did have a first beer at some point. I don't remember when it was.
But it was weird. Sort of like, you know, you've been used to drinking maybe pop or like soda or water. It's those things where it's something that I just call be with the non-being. So it's be with the awkwardness, be with the uncomfortableness as best you can. If we add anything else to that, we're just making it more difficult. So it's finding some being, so practices that help you to feel as if you're in the present moment. And those are anything from grounding yourself, stilling your mind, opening your heart. These are all practices that will help us find the present moment and find a sense of being, which is where we are always anyway. It's the mind that projects us into various places where we think that we either can't cope, or we might be overwhelmed, or we have to have something more from the present moment than what we are getting. But we're always ever going to be in the present moment, even when you manifest your outcome, whatever that is, you know, however wonderful it is, you know, radical recovery, millions of dollars, manifesting an amazing partner, whatever it is, this thing that we're wishing to manifest. When we get there, guess what? The present moment will still be there. We think that it will be better, and it may well be, but it's still going to be the present moment, and that present moment is still going to have challenges, because you're in this thing called life, and life is going to constantly have challenges. So the challenge of the transformation is something like there's a surrendering to it. Once you've made the commitment to making that transformation, you can almost just let things occur. Maybe like I was going to say sort of like a woman having a baby. It's like, you know, there's no need to force it. The transformation is that the baby will come out. It will work its way out. And I think that when we make the outcome of what it is that we wish to experience, what we wish to manifest, if that's really, really clear, as long as we're continuing to take action to move towards it, we notice when we're getting further away. And then number 4 is like being flexible in our approach. It'll manifest. we'll be nearer to it. And if we don't fully manifest it, at least we'll be nearer to it than where we once were. And I think there is a process which goes with life, which I think life, it's a belief really that I have, but I think that life wishes for us to grow. And I think once we're clear on where we're going, and if it's in accordance with like life's wishes, it's like which life wishes for us to grow. I think that we can almost surrender to that that transformational process. It's going to be a little awkward. It's going to feel a bit weird. It might not sound completely exactly as we wished for it to sound, but eventually it will find its way, and eventually it'll be manifested. It'll be born. It'll come through.
Yeah. In some ways, it's a bit like, because you talked there about growth. In some ways, it's a bit like the learning journey we all go through, and a lot of people. I mean, I know I get very frustrated if I'm doing something new, and it takes me longer to figure out than I think I should be able to figure this out, and I get quite frustrated. And I always take a step back from that and say, okay, clearly I don't know what I'm doing here yet. And I always add yet.
Great word.
So language is really important. I'll come back to that in a moment. And it's kind of like that stage where, and when you think, the classic example, I guess, is for most people who've learned to drive a car, is those early days when you're thinking of, and this is where this 7 plus or minus chunk comes up. Right. So we're thinking, okay, check the mirror, check the ignition. Is the handbrake off? Can we put it into gear? So there's all this stuff going on. And now, once we've gotten to the stage where we've learned to drive and we've got quite a bit of experience, all of that stuff is actually not separate bits of information. It's all just one chunk. It's like get in the car and start driving, right? That's like one chunk. It's maybe not even that. It's like, okay, I'm going to go from A to B and I'll just use the car. So to me, and I've been much more cognizant of some of those situations where I've started doing something new that I knew was going to be quite challenging. And I got to this point where I got quite frustrated because I just wasn't making any progress. And then okay, relax. This is just that unconscious competence area. And at some point, if you can relax enough and you keep doing the work on it, obviously, to learn it, it's kind of like almost you fall over a waterfall and all of a sudden, it's all falling into place now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect metaphor. It's that relaxing, which is what I could be with the non-being. It's finding, okay, you're getting overwhelmed about what's happening. You're getting frightened. You're getting angry or whatever. That's not going to help. Forcing this is not going to help. Come out, come away from it, come back to it. And you might well see it with different eyes. You might hear it differently. You might, it's one of those things where some of the geniuses that have existed in life would go to bed with a piece of paper and a pencil right next to the bedside on the bedside table. It'd probably be an iPhone these days, but they'd have those great insights into solving those problems at a different level of consciousness. And sometimes that was when they were drifting through in and out of sleep, because you're going into so you're in beta, then you slightly relax, you go into alpha, and then you go into theta, before you go to delta. So when you're in alpha and theta states, that's like super learning. It's where the unconscious is really open. And you can come up with ideas. I mean, I've had the most amazing ideas in the shower, and or on a walk in nature. And it's just, it's like I'm either connected to my intuition or the something bigger than me. Something more intelligent than me, or certainly more intelligent than just this. And I call this the want, get, be mind. Why do I call it the want, get, be mind? Well, it can't really be. It's always wanting something. It wants something because when it gets it, then it can be. It's like, well, how often does it ever be? And this is why we have symbols like the Buddha and even Krishna. They're in these states of being, and why people look up to them. The mind feels that it has to always get somewhere, and that's the unconscious, that's the ego. But when we're in those states and we start forcing things, because the want, get, be mind wants to force, it wants something. I want it. When I get it, only then I can be. But it doesn't get to be. It never gets to be. If it is, it's momentary, and then it's on to wanting something else again. So actually, it's the creation of being now, that creation of finding some stillness that actually will help you connect with other intelligence that exists within us and maybe outside of us, that we can then figure out solutions. I love the quote which Einstein had, which is, you cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. I think we've talked about that before. Well, if we're talking about transformation, growth, challenges, all these things, that's what it is. It's that life is full of challenge. Doesn't matter whether you win the lottery and you win 10 million on the lottery. Just saw a video on it on YouTube the other day. A man in Britain, he won 9.7 million. He lost it all within 10 years. Within 10 years, his consciousness didn't believe he was worthy of it. And for whatever reason, he got rid of the lot. He was back to delivering coal for a living and working in a factory making biscuits or something. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I don't know whether it's the kind of people, the majority of people that play the lottery maybe fall into that kind of mindset, but there's just so many stories of that where people have this big windfall and then within a relatively short space of time, it's all gone. I mean, spending $1 million each year, well, you'd have to be spending more than $1 million each year to get rid of it in 10 years, wouldn't you? Because the rest of it is accumulating interest.
Absolutely. It's another example of that money doesn't solve things. I've worked with some phenomenally wealthy clients, and to begin with, when I manifested them, it was it surprised me. My belief system back then, we'll be talking a good decade more ago, but my belief system back then was, well, they're multimillionaires. They've obviously sorted out all their problems. You know, they must be living an amazing life. And what I discovered was they were living the same lives that the clients that hadn't got as much money were living, just with they were spending that little bit less. The houses were smaller, but the same issues were within business. They were within families. They were within their mindset, how they think on a daily basis. Talking about the want, get, be mind, they still had a want, get, be mind. It wasn't fabulous all the time. That was a big, I don't know why it was really, but it was a big eye-opening thing. Oh, in fact, I would say, yes, I do know why it is, because the unconscious always knows. My dad was very much a businessman, and we had a factory, and he was always worried about money, and it was always about thinking that, I think it was an unconscious thing that we were brought up, which was money solves problems. Money solves this and that and the other, and there was a fear about not having enough of it. And I think he also saw other people who'd been more successful financially and had some jealousy towards that. So that was like an unconscious program that was within my mindset of that, well, money will solve this. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Sometimes I've noticed it creates even more problems. Well, it's a different kind of problem that people who don't have much money have. So we have to come back down to our mindset, our focus, and practices that I'm very big on this, on practices that help us to feel a sense of being now, not because if we talk about the want, get, be mind, well, if we say, well, that doesn't work, what does work? And it's more about connecting with a sense of being now. And then whatever challenge you're then facing, you're coming with that being or more of that being now. You're not thinking that fixing that problem or whatever the manifestation is you're working towards is going to be the be all and end all. You have to come as best you can from the creation of that being now. So it becomes quite spiritual, because you're finding that you're becoming as much as you can to getting that Buddha mindset, where you're having more presence. The more presence and the more being that you can have, paradoxically, you're going to have more of a clearer mind in order to be able to work towards the manifestation of your outcome. And you'll have that being now, not at the end of it. I want to fix this, because when I fixed it, then I can be.
That's right.
So it's like coming.
So do you have a simple exercise that everyone can do to kind of go from that drive and grind state to that being stage as being?
Well, there's three, and I've mentioned them already, and I'm not going to go into the Enneagram today because I think it's too big and too open. But three simple practices are stilling the mind, grounding into the body, and opening the heart. So there are certain personality types that need to work on opening the heart. That's Enneatypes 3, 7, and 8. I do something called Enneagram mentoring. Ennea means 9, gram is graph. It's a graph of 9 types. It's so much more than that, but I do a lot of mentoring with types. I have a sense that Jürgen might be a 5. So that would be that you'd benefit greatly from grounding into your body. When you do something like that, it actually reminds your mind that you have a body, and you would feel that more of that sense of being. And there are other types like me that have to work at stilling the mind. I'm an Enneagram type 6. So Enneatypes 1s, 2s, and 6s greatly benefit from stilling the mind. The more that you do that, those are simple practices, but the more that you can find something and you get into doing that, when you're not doing it, it feels like you're not brushing your teeth. It feels a bit awkward. I haven't brushed my teeth today. So it's something that will help you find that sense of that being. Gabor Mate is an Enneagram type 5. I just listened to an interview with him. And in the last 10 years, he's discovered something, discovered yoga and how beneficial it was to him. He didn't realize, and I'd say he's an Enneagram type 5 in the 4-wing. So it just means that it's something that enables him to get to that sense of being now. This is why it's called spiritual practice, but it could just be psychological practice. It's something that helps you to feel that sense of being now. It's vitally important, regardless of whether you're even retired. I think Gabor Mate is retired, still writes books, but it overrides that won't get de-mind, because there's always that feeling that there's something that we need to accomplish. But actually, all spiritual teachings are saying no. And when I've worked with people in business, it's kind of, we don't want to use the word spiritual, but eventually when I've introduced them to something like the Enneagram, then they've ended up realizing that they are a certain personality type, and they do have a won't get be mind. And this kind of just makes sense psychologically. And I said, well, that's fine. We leave it there. It doesn't have to go any further. But there's something that I do, or a phrase that I use, which is that by doing something like that and creating that sense of being now, we're surrendering to the intelligence beyond intelligence, whatever we call that. But it's an intelligence beyond this intelligence, which thinks it's so intelligent. But there is an intelligence out there, whatever we call that, and we're able to connect with that much more. So those three practices are beneficial, and you can go into so many different things about stilling the mind, grounding into the body, and opening the heart. But you have to find something that's right for you. Yeah,
and there's lots of different things. I know you mentioned having ideas in the shower. I do a lot of bike riding, and particularly these days I'm on my own a lot because it's cold in the mornings when the bunch goes, and I don't handle the cold very well these days anymore. So I go later. And when I'm on my own, it's kind of like everything just quietens down because I'm focused on just that physical activity, which is probably a little bit of that in the body
definitely
style that you mentioned. And I get lots of ideas there. So anything that and if it's enjoyable as well, I think is really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, this is fascinating, Daniel. I could go on talking ages, and we've only just touched a little bit on Enneagrams, but I think that might be a whole another episode or even a big episode. So I think it's a good point now to move on to the buzz, which is our lightning round of 5 questions that I ask every guest. And the idea is you'll share some tips and inspire the listener to go and do something awesome today as a result. You all set?
Yeah, go for it.
What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Take the blinkers off. Become more focused on your outcome, and in summary, really, with everything that we've said, I mean, it's like, ground into the body, still the mind, and open the heart, and think as openly as you possibly can.
Yeah, I love it. Be open and take those blinkers off. Yeah, see more of the world. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Educate myself. I think I'm constantly learning. And I learn from people who've already manifested outcomes that I wish to manifest. So I would say modeling other people, becoming aware of where other people have had success in all different types of shapes and forms.
Yes, there's another topic we could go down the rabbit hole on the modeling. Rapid learning techniques, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's so many. There's masses and masses of stuff out there that people have excelled at, and they get great results from, and all the information's there. That's the brilliant thing about the internet. It's the fact that it's just, you don't have to Google something and you'll find experts straight away. You'll find masters of this and that and the other, and it's that little thing up there, that little box where you can write anything in, is just like, you could write amazing things in there, and you're going to get amazing things out. And then you're going to find videos of people having talked about it and done it, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of the internet. We're in what I love the phrase, a global village now. It's like, well, okay, find out what this guy's doing over here, and this girl's doing. What are they experiencing?
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? All right. Well, it kind of relates to the next question, which is, what's a favorite resource you use most often?
I think it's the internet. I would say it's the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that everything's on there, from information to hypnosis. I still listen to hypnosis every now and again. In fact, there was some books, like self-development books, that I bought years ago, and there was a CD in the back of them, and I couldn't remember where the CD was. And I just thought, do you know what? I'd like to listen to hypnosis, and I really like that CD. I haven't listened to it for 15 years. It was on YouTube. The author of it actually uploaded it, so people had it for free now. In fact, the book's just down there. Everything. I think it'd probably be the internet. Everything's on there.
Everything's on there. Exactly. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Everything's on there. Yeah.
All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Accountability. That came up really big. It was as big as a Hollywood sign in my mind. Accountability. So it's not my job to keep a client on track. My job is to hand back accountability of, I can help you, I can assist you, I can mentor you, I can coach you, but you're responsible for your own life. And the more you can make someone accountable, the more you hand back their power, we are all incredibly powerful beings that can, we could do so much. But there's a part of our unconscious with almost everyone that hits a ceiling somewhere. So to hand back that accountability in a gentle way.
Yeah, that's
sometimes
right.
not always gentle, but most usually gentle. Most people are committed. Most people who work with me are already committed to change. So it's just, it's helping them. One phrase sometimes that you can use, which is, I'm allowing this to happen, or I'm still currently allowing this to happen. What's still currently happening in my life is. So there's a presupposition on that can change and will change. Even using the word yet, I interrupted you slightly earlier, and you used the word yet, and I just think it's the amazing word, the power of the word yet. But if you help people to understand how powerful that they are consciously choosing, or even unconsciously choosing. Yeah, it's an unconscious, but this is where you currently are. Handing that back is an incredibly powerful thing, because it's basically saying, I am currently creating this recipe and I don't like it very much. Okay. But if I know that I am creating something that I don't like, then I'm equally as powerful to create something that I do like. So you can hand back that accountability. It helps you to realize that, okay, I'm in control of the master computer, and currently I'm getting not very good results, but it is a current. And if I'm that powerful to create it like that, then I'm equally powerful to create it like this. Give it focus, take action, be flexible, keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. And that message of that we're all actually incredibly powerful is something I think we all need to kind of remind ourselves of quite a lot. And who was it that said our greatest fear is not that we are weak, but that we are powerful beyond belief?
Marianne Williamson, an Enneagram type 3. That was in a book, Return to Love, I think, from 93. Yeah. Just kind of channeled that was. Yeah. It was, and it's so true. Yeah. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Wow. Really? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Final question of the buzz. Number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves.
What do you mean in terms of, help me with that one?
Well, it's kind of like, in a marketing sense or a business sense, there's this traditional throwaway line that you've got to be different. You've got to differentiate yourself.
Be yourself. Be the most authentic self that you can be. Otherwise, you're forcing and trying to be something that you're not. Be the most authentic self that you can be. Brené Brown is an Enneagram type 6. It has been very successful with the power of vulnerability. That's become something that's become almost like a unique selling point. So I think that the more that you're authentic, and that means being true to yourself, working out what makes you happy, you're going to return to more of a sense of being now. If you're trying to be something that you're not, that goes with what I call the want, get, be, mine.
Right, yeah.
I want to be like this, because when I get to be like that, then people are going to see me this way. And then when people see me that way, then I'll get what I want. But that's going to be exhausting.
That's right. I was just going to say,
do this in relationships. You go out on a date, and it's like giving the impression that I'm like this person. And actually, what works the best is if you sort of say, this is who I am. These are the struggles that I go through, but this is what I've overcome. This is what I've achieved. This is who I am. Yeah. And that must work with products that are out there on the market where some people are buying something, buying services or products, and you're buying into something. So I just think it's easier for the whole ethos of everything just to be authentic, this is how it is. It's how I've got my clients over the years. I've done interviews and they've said, oh, I heard you on this interview and you said such and such, and did I? I don't remember that. Okay. But I obviously said something that resonated with them, and they took one little thing, and I wasn't trying to sell. I wasn't trying to be different. I was different just by being myself. And we're all so individual that we're all actually different.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. And I love that you said that, because you talked earlier about modeling, and I think there's some people get confused between modeling somebody but being authentically yourself at the same time, which I think you can do.
Yes.
But they kind of think that modeling someone means doing exactly what they do, acting exactly like they act. And
the good metaphor would be like, Jürgen would like to make a really fantastic chocolate cake. Okay, so we need to model what Jeff does when he makes his fantastic chocolate cake. But it's never going to be the same chocolate cake exactly. The ingredients are always going to be slightly different, and you're going to put whatever you put into making that chocolate cake. So it'll still be Jeff's chocolate cake and Jürgen's chocolate cake. They're never going to be they're never going to be exact. They're always going to be slightly different. So, how I coach, for example, is not really how I was taught. It's like driving. Do you drive the way that you were taught when you were, 17? When you learned to drive, like me? You develop your own style. You develop your own style. You become yourself, and you're still modeling how someone drives a car. You need to change the gears this way, and this is how you. I mean, even to this day, I still do a lifesaver move that I learned when I used to ride motorbikes. The lifesaver move is you wouldn't do it in a car. You do it on a motorbike, because if you're going to have an accident in a car, most likely you're going to survive. On a motorbike, you've got to do this extra maneuver, and I still do it. It's still part of my unconscious protocol in driving the car, and I still do it when I'm in the car. It's such an unconscious program that it's in there, and I think, well, why delete that? You never know.
Yeah, it's serving you, right? It's not doing any harm. All right. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz, Daniel. Now, this has been great conversation. Where can people find out more about the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared with us today, and resume, take up the conversation?
You can put me into Google and put in Daniel Hill Coaching. I'm pretty much everywhere. You find me on LinkedIn. Daniel Hill Online Video Life Coach. I'm there. Daniel Hill Online Video Coach, actually, on LinkedIn. DanielHill.biz is my website. I'm on Instagram, and I'm doing TikTok now. And I've got a big YouTube channel, which was about 10 years old, with lots of interviews and techniques and things on there over the last decade or so. So, yeah. Find that, reach out to me. I've got a Calendly link, have a free 30-minute conversation with me. Look forward to speaking to anybody.
Excellent. We'll include those links in the show notes, of course. Now, what action would you like our listener to take away from today's conversation, Daniel?
If there's something that's not quite right in your life, then look at how you would like it to be. And so go to an outcome of what you wish to experience, and be clear on that. And if that means reaching out to me, then you can reach out to me. But if it means reaching out to someone else. Most likely when we're moving towards an outcome, we need help and guidance and mentoring or something. We must take action towards what it is that we wish to get towards. And then we need to notice if we're getting nearer or further away. A lot of people, when they decide to change their life or to move towards something, they're not usually very clear on what it is. And then what they'll do is take some action, and then if it doesn't work, they might give up, or they might just hit a brick wall. So we need to be flexible. And when you're flexible, you're much more likely to be able to work out what it is that you need to do in order to be able to get your outcome.
Yeah, I love it. And that's it's basically the 5 success principles that are taught in NLP, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
All right. And finally, Daniel, who else should I bring on the show and why?
Who else should you bring on the show? That's a really good question. You've stumped me there. I wasn't thinking I was going to be asked that. You've already seen Riley. Well, there's a guy in America that I've been connected to. There's an alternative health doctor, I think they call them functional medicine doctor. Is that what they call them? It's very different. In this country, we'd call it something different. We've talked a little bit about health today. I think he'd be an interesting person to interview. He's very busy, he's an encyclopedia of what would you call it? Sort of alternative health, you would say.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just think he stumps me every single time with how much knowledge he's got. And you and I are personality types that love knowledge. He's somebody that you could just listen to. It's like opening an alternative medical encyclopedia. He just comes out with all these words and things, and he's got massive experience. He might be someone that you find interesting to listen to. All
right. Yeah. Well, we'll get an introduction to him. So what's his name?
Dr. Justin Marchiagani. You can find him on YouTube. I think he's got about 60,000 subscribers on there. And it's Justin Health. Justin Health. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll get an introduction to Justin from you and see if we can find a time to chat to him.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, Daniel. I've really enjoyed our conversation. We've kind of barely scratched the surface, I feel, but maybe we'll do a repeat performance again sometime soon.
More than happy to do that, yeah. Pleasure.
Thanks a lot. All the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.